Okay, so I'm Dr. Prince, and I wanted to take a few moments to go over the closed reading strategy that we tried in class. We had our sample reading, which is our standard review, and we had these symbols called think marks, and each symbol represents something, so I'm going to go over that now. So the circle represents unfamiliar words or phrases. The underline means that that's information that we need to know. The question mark is for information that we either don't understand or inspires a new question. Then the infinity symbol represents connections we make either with self, the world, or another text. And then we use check marks for supporting evidence. Typically, if we have a question that we're answering and it's dependent on what we're reading, then those would be the items that we would check off. So I'm just going to quickly show you how we would use the think marks while we do a close read. So after I've read the article without doing anything to it, I would go back into the reading now and reread again. And this time as I'm reading, I would be looking for words that were unfamiliar or phrases that were unfamiliar. So just a couple of words that probably would have stood out in my first reading would have been intermolecular. So I'd go ahead and circle intermolecular. And then possibly atomic. Maybe I don't know what the word atomic means just yet. I think it has something to do with atoms, but I'm not really sure because, again, I'm learning this information. And maybe this is the first time that I've even heard of the word plasma. So I'll go ahead and circle the words that are unfamiliar to me. Now, if you notice, I'm using different colors because each color represents the symbol that I'm using. So now there's information that I need to know, and I'm going to underline that. If I go back and look at the standard, perhaps in class, I'll tell you what our purpose for learning is that day. So in this particular case, our goal is to describe the movement of particles in solids, liquids, and gases, and of course plasma states. So that means I'm going to look through this information and see if I can find text that relates to this particular focus. Alright, so we're talking about movement. Well, if I read the first line, it tells me that tiny particles move at different rates. So I'm going to need to know that. Again, we're looking at solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas, so I'm going to again reread the material, and I'm going to look for that information. So I find that for solids, I get some information about the motion of the particles here. So I'll underline that. It tells me that their shape is held together, whereas when I look at liquids, because they move more easily past one another, they're not able to hold their shape as well. Go ahead and underline that. And then gases, the particles are moving fast, and they're able to break away from one another and fill the available volume. And then I have plasmas. So I've covered all four. These move freely like gases, but they have electric charges. Alright, so now I've underlined all the information I need to know about the movement of the particles. Now I get my next color, so the question mark is represented by blue, and I'm going to look around to see if I don't understand some information, or maybe I have a new question. And typically when you do that, you would just want to draw the question mark near that information. Maybe I'm really struggling with this sentence here, I just don't understand what it's saying. So I'm going to go ahead and put a question mark here because I just don't understand. And I'll write that information here. Okay, and that's fine. Maybe I would have come up with another idea or come up with another question that I'd want to put somewhere else in the text, but each text is unique. Now I want to make some connections, so I'm going to get my next color. I'm going to draw the infinity symbol, and what I'll do here, depending on what it is that I want to relate it to, I'll write the S, the W, or T along with the other T. So as I'm reading through the information again, the rate of movement of tiny particles in the same material is different when the material is a solid, liquid, or gas. Well, I know something about solids, liquids, and gases, and immediately one of the things I can think of is water. So I might put an infinity symbol here for text to self, and that will help me remember that I'm thinking about water in the different states, as ice, as steam, and as a liquid. Now, I don't have to use all three connections. I may not have a text to self. Maybe I have a text to text, or perhaps I can remember something from a movie or from something I've seen in the grocery store where I can say text to world. There's a connection there. All right, and then of course is the supporting evidence, which is represented by a check mark. And there weren't any questions really asked in this particular sample reading that we used this week, but if we were to ask a question, what we would do, we just go back into the text, and if we found the answer to support that question or prompt, we would just put a check mark by it so that we know that that is the information that supports the question that we're trying to answer. And that's really brief on how to do a closed read in science class.